And then the hadith, you have to know hadith because the hadith, some of the hadith yufassir al-Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ is the greatest commentator of the Quran in his sayings and his actions. He was the Quran. The saying that he was the Quran, kana al-Quran yamshi, is isti'ara. It's not a literal meaning, but Aisha said in a sound hadith, kana khuluquhu al-Quran. He embodied the khuluq of the Quran. Like all of his character was from the Quran. And then 6, knowing the stories of the Quran. So there are many stories in the Quran, knowing them, Musa and Fir'aun, the story of Sulaiman, the story of Dawood with the man who comes asking him, he has his question. And then tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is a valid science of Islam. If you get into turuq and into some of the ways that tasawwuf has manifested, then that's a completely different thing. But the idea tasawwuf is not from Islam, is a completely modern view of some people. It has nothing to do with traditional Islam. Everybody accepted the idea of tasawwuf. And all of the great scholars of Islam speak well of this science, including Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, many of the scholars. So, but there are deviant Sufis, like there's deviant grammarians, there's deviant fuqaha, there's deviant, every group has deviants. And there's a lot of charlatans in tasawwuf traditionally. In fact, I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. When I was studying Arabic years ago, I read the maqamats. You have this genre, and the characters in the maqamat, they were like religious charlatans, which was a little shocking for me at the time. I was 22, 23 years old, and I read these stories, and they'd do things like they'd go to the mosque and claim they saw the Prophet and tell all the people that the Prophet told him that they should all give charity to him, and then he'd just steal the money and go off. But I realized later as I got older and just the fraudulent nature of so many people on this planet, and I'm dealing with some fraud right now. So you really, when I wrote the Purification of the Heart, my father read it and he was like, 1 page on fraud, and I don't think so. That was his comment. So, and he was defrauded by some really nefarious people. So fraud is part of life, and the worst types of frauds are religious frauds. I mean, I'll take a Goomba from Queens or New Jersey over a religious fraud. These people that trick people with religiosity. So you'll get that. You'll find that. And then usul ad-din, which is basically knowing the aqidah of the Muslims. So you have usul al-fiqh and usul ad-din, which some people call it fiqh al-akbar, Abu Hanifa's term. Usul al-fiqh is knowing how to derive the rulings out of fiqh. And then lugha, which is really important in our deen, to know the language of the Quran. The Quran uses, there's a gharib al-Quran, there's words in the Quran that you think you know what they mean because you know Arabic, but then when you look in the tafsir, you find out that they don't mean what you think they mean. And there's a lot of that in the Quran. And then nahu, absolutely necessary. You have to learn grammar. And then finally, rhetoric, al-bayan. That's the 12th. So those are his. Now, when we get to just beginning with back to the Jawahir. So I just wanted that as a prelude to this. When we get to the Jawahir of the Quran, Imam al-Ghazali identifies these, what he calls the jewels, and then what he calls the pearls. So the jewels are those that relate directly to Allah and to His attributes and His acts. The pearls are those that relate to the Sirat al-Mustaqim. So this first verse would be really a pearl because it's indicating, here's the guidance. Like this is the book that's going to take you to God. So ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, and that's for ta'zeem, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. Allah is يُعَظِّمُ كِتَابَهُ. So he's using, it's a ism ishara, it's a type of what we call a demonstrative pronoun, but it's a demonstrative pronoun not for something close, but for something far generally, but it's for ta'zim. So it's this book, this magnificent, this momentous, this great book. La rayba. And some stop there. La rayb fihi. There's no doubt in it. La rayba fihi. That la is nafi lil jins. So la rayba fihi. It's very interesting to start a book by letting you know from the very start of it that there's absolutely no doubt in the book. In other words, rest assured, this book is free of doubt. Huda lil muttaqin. Here, the huda is put into the what we would call indefinite. So it's it's tankir li ta'zim. So it's nekira for ta'zim in grammar, in rhetoric. So the nekira here indicates again that this is divine guidance. This is not ordinary guidance. This isn't guiding you on the road to the marketplace. This is something mu'azzam. It's real guidance. Huda lil muttaqin. The muttaqin, Dr. Cleary, and he, I think he's the only person probably, I don't know if ever, but certainly I don't know anybody else. But there, I think maybe Uzutsu, there might be some others. But he could read the Hindu scriptures, the Buddhist scriptures, the Christian scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, and the Muslim scriptures. So those are the 5 major world religions in their original tongues. And really well. I mean, he knew Sanskrit, he knew Pali, he translated the Dhammapada from Pali, and he actually identifies something in there of a prediction of the Prophet ﷺ. But he knew Greek, he knew Hebrew, and he knew Arabic. And so when you see his word choice, you really have to think about it. And one of the things that he says in his, the reason why he chose this word